Okay, today I want to talk about the prospect of spring football and why that's even more likely than it has ever been for the college football season, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's college football related, sports related. We have a good time today. I want to talk about the prospect of a spring college football season to take place in 2021. I'm going to bounce around from a couple of different sources and read aloud. I'm going to put the graphics on the screen for some of this so that you can follow along. It's going to be much more explanatory. We'll get to some opinion stuff at the end, but it's really about the news and what's going on in college football. As I don't have my head in the sand, just like you don't have your head in the sand about the prospect of a college football season. And I understand that many of us, and that is from the top on down, want a fall college football season. But as virus cases continue to spike and you see more conferences and programs err on the side of caution, add to this, there is no central governing body for college football. And you will see more and more of these coaches and these athletic directors be unwilling to take chances, because we're going to start with the very bad news with Dennis Dodd, right? So Dennis Dodd writes this column for CBSSports.com, and he talks to a University of Illinois computer science professor, and he had some troubling data, and I'm going to read aloud here from Dodd's column. Dr. Sheldon Jacobson told CBS Sports that he expects a 30 to 50% infection rate of approximately 13,000 players competing in the FBS this season. Based on his research, he also projects a 3 to 7 deaths among those players due to COVID-19. His quote here: "A few of them could end up in the hospital and you'll have a small number who could die. I don't want to sugarcoat it for you. I just want to give you the facts. If everybody comes together under normal circumstances, we'll probably see that kind of outcome." Goes on to, in this column, Dodd does, to say Jacobson made his projections from CDC data that estimates 1 death per 1,000 people who have symptoms in the college age group of 18 to 22. Taking into account that range and medical care provided for football players, the death rate would be lower than the general population, Jacobson said. He stressed those numbers could change based on available statistics. Less than 1% of the U.S. population has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. Approximately 5% of the 2.6 million cases in the U.S. have resulted in death. Obviously, not everyone has been tested. However, with students assembling in large numbers on campuses in the fall, that ramps up the overall risk and likelihood of infections. Jacobson said, "I guarantee someone is going to die. The virus does not discriminate." So that's DEFCON 1 stuff. And there's lots of things to unpack in there. For the folks that don't think that COVID-19 is that big a deal, you're going to go, hey, the numbers are the numbers. How many people are actually being affected versus how many people are actually dying? I am one to want to remain cautious. I also love college football, and I'm going to be interested to continue to see how this evolves with this data that's going out there, because the money spigot is really what nobody wants to talk about here. Because if you turn the money off for college football, you're talking about institutions going under, not just programs. You've seen Morehouse College, which doesn't really value football that much, cancel all fall sports, right? We've seen a couple of Division III universities also cancel fall sports. And we've seen some football programs just decide it ain't worth it for us anyway in a normal year because we lose money on this sport. So why risk getting somebody infected or sick? And let's not act like death is the only outcome here. Getting really, really sick is still very, very bad. And if you get very, very sick as a kid whose future is in professional football and it affects your heart, and we don't know how that does or doesn't, then you're at risk, to which many of you would say, hey man, you walk outside, you might get struck by lightning. It's a little bit higher of a risk than that. And I don't like the flippant attitude that some people have about this. Just give it the serious nature that it demands, because it's all not real until it comes to your doorstep. And because my dad works at a hospital, I am super aware of this. Both of my parents are in the target age for most susceptible to COVID-19. My mother has had a number of surgeries, many of which I am terrified about. And you see her every day on this channel. You know how much I value my mom here and my parents, and I know how much you do as well. that said, I know that the kids are very excited to get back to football and get back to practice and even voluntary workouts and involuntary workouts, as Deshaun White, who's going to be the starting middle linebacker for Oklahoma this year, even tweeted out, felt so good to be back, and that's where many of them are. Now, I want to go from that to what Lincoln Riley has had to say and what some other athletic directors have had to say about what's going on in college football right now. And again, I'm going to read aloud from a column that Pete Thamel wrote on Yahoo Sports, which I think gets to the unknowns in this. As a matter of fact, unknown is in the headline. Let's start with this, right? I'm going to read aloud from Thamel's column. Coaches and athletic directors remain worried about the stop and start scenario with canceled games, a chaotic schedule, and eventually a season ending somewhere amid the fall. Oklahoma coach Lincoln Riley made clear that it's his strong preference to play football in the fall as long as it's safe for the players. But he acknowledged in a phone interview with Yahoo Sports on Tuesday that he's concerned about how to keep his players safe from the virus once the school's more than 20,000 students returned. Quoting Riley here saying, "It's on the mind of every coach. It's probably as easy as it's going to be right now when most of the other students aren't here. There's legitimate concerns when the student body shows up. What's that going to look like? It's that great unknown right now." The scary thing about it for us, or the thing that gives you some concern, is that the students show up and a week or two later, you're trying to start the season. It's on our minds. The more people in the area, the more potential risk and things you have to worry about. And that's really, really important. Add to this, Bob Bowlesby told Yahoo Sports that a spring season is probably the last resort here. But also, we know, as I mentioned, we've had schools already decide that they're not going to play football, and some are actually mulling over whether or not they want to play it in the fall at all. To that, we get to the spring football portion of the video, right? To which Riley said to Yahoo Sports, and I'm quoting here, "It's very doable. This can happen. We've been a part of putting together models of what would potentially this look like. The season is going to be different. We might as well come to terms with that. If we do decide that the spring is the best option, if we get to that point, we shouldn't be scared of it. It's very doable." Going back to the column that Thamel wrote here, Riley acknowledged some of the adjustments that would have to be made playing in the spring. That includes elite players skipping the season for the draft, a shorter schedule, and potentially a later start in the fall. I'm quoting Riley here when he said, "If we reduce the number of games and give enough time off, I think it's doable. I really do." The biggest issue would also obviously be the schedule alignment, to which I thought it was interesting that Riley gave his thoughts about perhaps having a central governing body for college football, not just for this moment, but for every moment. Riley here, I'm quoting, "This is the perfect example of where you'd love to have a true head like an NFL type commissioner. Someone has to make a decision for everyone at some point. The model and the way it's set up with different schools and league commissioners and the NCAA, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of smart people, and they're not always going to agree." One athletic director told Thamel this way, "There's no one in a position of leadership taking on the very difficult challenge of developing the plan for spring football. Given that we are entering July, it now seems unavoidable that we are headed to a fall with a lot of canceled games and perhaps even a national stoppage a few weeks into the season." Greg Byrne, athletic director at Alabama, went on record to say, "We all will be having our antenna up when the students return to our campuses. And just like we've done for the last 4 months, we will continue to adjust to the best of our abilities. Our plan right now is to move forward with the fall. But we're also listening to our health experts to guide us." So with that in mind, I wanted to move straight into what would a spring football season look like, right? Because obviously nobody at the NCAA level has got off their keister to actually talk about this. And while many athletic directors are part of models, that's just what they are. They're models. And I'm with Riley. I think that college football could do with a governing body because the NCAA doesn't actually run anything. The conferences do. And there are 10 of them in the FBS governing 130 FBS teams. And that's not including Jack Swarbrick and the guys, Jack Swarbrick and the guys running Notre Dame and your noted independents here. But for Oklahoma, because that's the team that I talk about the most, and it's my team, a season might start February 20th, and this is Keegan Renault who actually wrote this down. I thought it was a good start. which would be after the Super Bowl, but also would be well into the winter, and give everybody an opportunity to not just play their conference schedule, which would what it would be, but be done by June and in time to kind of switch back around to a regular college football season. So week 1, February 20th, OU Baylor. Week 2, February 27th, that'd be OU Texas at a site that would be determined, because we know that the Texas State Fair would not hold this game if we're in a spring football season, because Texas State Fair takes place in October. No telling if that thing's even going to go on this year. Week 3 would be Bedlam, and then week 11 would be the Big 12 title game on May 1st. So Bedlam March 13th, Bedlam Big 12 title game May 1, 2021, and then the college football playoff would take place from May 15th to May 31st with champ being crowned, and then we're basically taking a couple of weeks, 3, 4, and then right back to the 2021 season. I think this is interesting because, well, you'd have 2 21 seasons in one calendar year. And I'm all here for football, right? But we got to get through basically the next 6 months with as little scathing as possible while we wait for a vaccine to show up and we wait for our public health officials to tell us that it is safe for us all to mingle among each other. And what we're learning about this is that so much of what we do is built around mass activity because we are social beings. Even those of us that are somewhat antisocial and don't want to be in large groups, we enjoy watching large groups interact with each other, be it at a football game or a concert or even at an amusement park where you might be sitting on the bench. I find all of this to be in flux, but also I wanted to speak to it and I wanted to give you the facts as they are on July 1. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. All right, that is it for, not it for me. Download the podcast, the RJ Young Show podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I am going to upload something to those, to that particular audio format twice a week, beginning Thursday. That'd be the day after this one where you probably have heard this segment. All right, that's it for me. Doses.